Hello everybody, it is July 18th, 2018. On this day in 1970, Pink Floyd, Roy Harper, Kevin Ayers, and the Edgar Broughton Band all appeared at a free concert held in Hyde Park, London, England. Alright, tonight we're going to talk about a classical CD. It's the first time I've reviewed a classical CD. So far I've just done rock. But I plan to do country, and I plan to do other type stuff too. So yeah, this is for people that maybe don't like classical too much, don't listen to it a whole lot. But check out this album. It's called, it's put out on the VoxBox label. Eric Satie is the composer. This is a 2 CD set, and actually, they changed the cover. Now the cover looks like this. Sorry. It looks like that's the current cover to this CD. Alright. Born in Honfleur, France. You like my pronunciation there? Which is in Normandy. And he was born, Eric Satie was born on May 17th, 1866. I need to wake up here. I've had a long day. I think this is why I'm reviewing this album. Because I always use this album to put me to sleep. And this is not putting down the album at all. I'm not saying, hey, this album is so bad it puts me to sleep. It's a good put you to sleep. It's like so soothing and relaxing. My brother once had a friend that he said his friend judged a CD on how well it put him to sleep, which is kind of weird. But anyway, born near Le Havre, France, in Honfleur, which is in Normandy, the northern coast of France, in 1866. And that town's pretty much due south of London, speaking of London. And he died in Paris on July 1st, 1925, at the age of 59. Alright, he's considered to be in the modern era of classical music. And classical music is actually, for us music students that have taken history courses in music, we are taught that it's kind of a misnomer to label all this music classical, because the classical era was actually between around 1730 and 1820. And the big classical composers were Beethoven, Haydn, and Mozart. Probably the big three from that era. So that is actually an era within serious music, if you want to call it that. And after the classical era came the romantic era, and then the modern era, I guess some people call it. So anyway, but we'll just go with the common parlance and call it classical music. Okay, so Satie was considered a member of the Parisian avant-garde group. Satie's work was a precursor to minimalism, surrealism, repetitive music, and the theater of the absurd. And Eric was influenced by Dadaism and Cubism later in his life. Alright, so Satie, he was also a writer of prose. He wrote for a range of publications, including Vanity Fair, and some of his writings he used a pen name to hide his real name. Satie's father was named Alfred. His mother's maiden name was Jane Anton. She was born in London to Scottish parents. When Eric was 4 years old, the family moved to Paris after his father got offered a translator's job in Paris. Eric's mother died in 1872 when he was only 6 years old. At that point, Eric was sent with his younger brother, Conrad, back to Honfleur to live with his paternal grandparents. There he received his first music lesson from a local organist. In 1878, when he was 12 years old, his grandmother died, and the two brothers moved back to Paris at that point. In 1879, in his teens, Eric entered the Paris Conservatory, and very soon his teachers labeled him untalented. George Matthias, a professor at the conservatory, described Eric's technique as insignificant and laborious and worthless. Émile Descommes called him the laziest student at the conservatory. After being sent home for 2.5 years, he was readmitted to the conservatory in 1885. I have a little typo here. I wrote 1985. That's definitely not right. He didn't go back. 1885, at the age of 19. But he still did not impress his teachers that much. So he went into the military a year later. But that didn't last long. After a few months, he was discharged after deliberately infecting himself with bronchitis. I think I have bronchitis tonight. Eric moved from his father's place to an apartment in Montmartre, a suburb of Paris. And Montmartre is actually a large hill in Paris in the 18th arrondissement. At this time, he began what turned out to be a long friendship with the poet Patrice Contamine, and his first compositions were published by his father. He then befriended Claude Debussy, moved into a smaller room in the Montmartre neighborhood. By 1891, Eric was the official composer and chapel master of the Rosicrucian order, which in French is Ordre de la Rose-Croix Catholique du Temple et du Graal. In 1893, Eric met Maurice Ravel for the first time, and Ravel came to be a famous composer. By mid-1886, all of Satie's financial income had vanished, so he moved again to cheaper and smaller lodgings. From 1899 on, Satie started making money as a cabaret pianist, adapting over 100 compositions of popular music for piano or piano and voice. Satie in later years would reject all cabaret music as vile, but for the time being it was an income. A lot of composers had similar stories. They took jobs they weren't crazy about, but you got to get by. All right, let me play some music. This is the 2 CD set, and I actually like this release. There are other Satie CDs, but I actually like this one with Frank Glazer playing piano, because this CD puts me to sleep the fastest. I think a lot of people have heard this before. This is called a gymnopédie, I think is how you pronounce it. It's all about space. It's all about, I think Satie once labeled himself a measurer of music. So he's measuring notes, he's measuring space, and bringing them in perfect balance. So very meditative music. This is Prelude en tapisserie. Excuse my French pronunciation. I can't even pronounce it right in English. I love this CD because you can hear the room. You can picture this guy sitting down, Frank Glazer, at a piano, and you can just hear the room. Play a couple more. Bonhomme en bois, I think, which means gentleman and made out of wood. Or maybe Gentleman in the Woods? I don't know. I have to study up on my French. It's a very modern sound. You know, it doesn't have the classical cadences of Mozart and Beethoven. Kind of a very French sound too. I mean, it's very kind of improvisational, off the cuff, playful, light, that kind of describes his music as it does Debussy, actually. Here's the second CD. There's 74 minutes of music on both CDs, making this very long. I would just switch off. One night I'd do one side, the CD1, the other night, CD2. This is Grossien. Probably a lot of you have heard this too. Sorry. Seriously, it's weird listening to this when I'm not in bed, because every time I've heard this I've been in bed trying to sleep, which this CD works wonders. Alright, one more. This is a nocturne. So maybe if you don't like classical, if you do like classical, you probably already know about Eric Satie. But if you're really afraid of classical as a genre and you just shy away from it, maybe start off with Eric Satie. That could be a good gateway composer because it's very listenable, very relaxing. It sounds pretty modern to modern ears. I mean, it doesn't sound like something from the 1600s. But yeah, and I've heard other Satie CDs, like I said, but this is my favorite. It's on the VoxBox Record label. It's got a different cover now. This is an old cover. I probably had this CD 15 or 20 years. Frank Glazer is playing piano. CDX5011 is a way to identify it. CDX5011. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I have over the years. Thanks a lot.